This lesson will conclude a series in Genesis containing the final two chapters of the book of Genesis, chapters 49 and 50. They are, of course, in Egypt, having been there at the start of the famine, and the famine started when Joseph was about 40 years old. So by the end of the book, we will see how long at the end of Genesis that they had indeed been in Egypt. In chapter 49, Jacob is on his deathbed, and he calls all of his sons in, some of them in a 27-verse long, often poetic and prophetic sayings by Jacob. He speaks curses on some of them, admonitions on some, and blessings on some of his sons. Remember that he knows his children. He knows what they have done. He knows if they have turned from errant ways, and all of that behavior will decide what he speaks over them. And as I will point out as we go through chapter 49, Jacob's curses and blessings and admonitions and what he speaks over his sons does come to pass. Genesis 49, verse 1. And Jacob called his sons and said, Gather yourselves together, that I may tell you that which shall befall you in the last days. 2. Gather yourselves together and hear, ye sons of Jacob, and hearken unto Israel your father. Reuben, thou art my firstborn, my might and the beginning of my strength, the excellency of dignity and the excellency of power. In other words, the firstborn should have gotten the best blessing. 4. Unstable as water thou shalt not excel, because thou wentest up to thy father's bed, then defiledst thou it. He went up to my couch. He is saying that Reuben is unstable as water. If you could think of a gush of water that is bubbling up, and water is not contained. If you have it in a glass and you move, it's going to move. It isn't stable because it is a liquid. He has compared Reuben to water. Now, Reuben, went into Bilhah, who was one of the handmaidens and a concubine of Jacob. And having committed that, he committed incest, and he will not have that first blessing. 5. Simeon and Levi are brethren. Instruments of cruelty are in their habitation. Now remember what they did. Their sister Dinah went out, and Shechem fell madly in love with Dinah, but the problem was that he forced himself upon her, committing rape. And Simeon and Levi took retribution. They went into the Shechemites. They killed all the men, and they took the women and the families and the possessions, and when they got back to Jacob, Jacob was furious with them, and he did not condone what they did, and it is considered what they did one of the darkest chapters in the history of Jacob's family. Now, what will happen to Simeon and to Levi? O soul, come not thou unto their secret, unto their assembly. Mine honor, be not thou united. For in their anger they slew a man, and in their self-will they digged down a wall. 7. Cursed be their anger, for it was fierce, and their wrath, for it was cruel. I will divide them in Jacob and scatter them in Israel, and that does come true. Simeon had no property. What he had was taken up by the house of Judah. Levi became the father of the priests, and the priests were not given a possession in the land because they were dependent upon living on temple property, on church, if you will, property, and living on sacrifices from the rest of the tribes. 8. Judah, thou art he whom thy brethren shall praise. Thy hand shall be in the neck of thine enemies. Thy father's children shall bow down before thee. And of course, not only did Christ come through the genealogy of Levi, he came through the generations of Judah. In fact, Judah was not, if you recall, a stellar member of the family. It was Judah who was tempted by his disguised daughter-in-law to have a relationship with her and produce a child of incest because she was his daughter-in-law, and that child's name was Phares. And in the book of Luke, you will find that that child, Phares, was an ancestor of the Messiah. Now, Judah, yes, he had acted in some dubious ways, but recall that it was Judah who pledged himself when they were persuading Jacob to allow Benjamin to go to Egypt. It was Judah who stood forth and stood up and came through and showed himself to be a far better person than he had demonstrated earlier. And it is true, his name Judah means praise. And he will be praised because he will be the father of the kings. 9. Judah is a lion's whelp. From the prey, my son, thou art gone up. He stooped down, he couched as a lion, and as an old lion, who shall rouse him up? And we speak of the Lion of Judah. In fact, when they were moving through the wilderness toward the promised land, the flag that the family of Judah carried had a lion as its emblem. 10. The scepter shall not depart from Judah, nor a lawgiver from between his feet, until Shiloh come, and unto him shall the gathering of the people be. Better translated, when he comes to Shiloh. In other words, Judah's offspring will be ruling until the King of Kings. comes into being. And that is a messianic prophecy here from Jacob. 11. Binding his foal unto the vine, and his ass's colt unto the choice vine, he washed his garments in wine, and his clothes in the blood of grapes. Plenty and prosperity will be the lot for Judah. There will be so many grapes and so much wine that they could wash their clothes in it if they so chose. 12. His eyes shall be red with wine, and his teeth white with milk, or with whitened by milk. He will have plenty in his vineyards and in his herd. 11. Zebulun shall dwell, and Zebulun is a child of Leah, shall dwell at the haven of the sea, and he shall be for a haven of ships, and his border shall be into Zidon. Now that came to pass, the family of Zebulun settled along the coast where the Phoenicians controlled and had the trade routes in their control, and Zebulun prospered there on that seacoast in commerce. Issachar, 14, is a strong ass couching down between two burdens. He's seen as a kind of an ox, and the two burdens would have been Jezreel and Carmel. He would have had his in between those two places. 15. And he saw that rest was good, and land that it was pleasant, and bowed his shoulders to bear, and became a servant unto tribute. Issachar liked rest. He would not fight. We will see that as we move through the books of the Old Testament. And when he says he would become a servant unto tribute, it means that he would pay mercenaries rather than to engage in any necessary warfare. 16. Dan shall judge his people as one of the tribes of Israel. 17. Dan shall be a serpent by the way, an adder in the path, that biteth the horse heels, so that his rider shall fall backward. He is going to fall into idolatry and false teaching. And it was in the territory of Dan that Jeroboam erected the golden calf for pagan worship. So Jacob's prophecy for Dan does come true. And 18, I have waited for thy salvation, O Lord. Now when we get to Revelation, Dan is missing. 19, Gad, a troop shall overcome him, but he shall overcome at the last. His very name means troop, and he will be a victor. 20, out of Asher his bread shall be fat, and he shall yield royal dainties. He is going to be producing fine food. 21, Naphtali is a hind let loose. He giveth goodly words. And Deborah in the 5th book of Judges commends the offspring of Naphtali. 22, Now we are down. We've done the 6 children of Leah, the 4 by the 2 concubines, Zilpah and Bilhah. And now we come to Joseph, who is the son of Rachel. Joseph is a fruitful bough, even a fruitful bough by a well, whose branches run over the wall. He flourishes. Of course, we have already seen in Egypt that Joseph flourished. 23. The archers have sorely grieved him and shot at him and hated him. And those words are in the Greek, sorely grieved, merah, and that means embittered, and shot at, rebab, with intensity, and satam, from deep-seated hatred. And of course, we have seen, even in the early days of Joseph as a young teenager, his very brothers, some wanted to kill him, and the others plotted to put him in a pit and then pull him out and sell him into bondage. And of course, as we have seen, he is a Christ type figure, and he did save his family from starvation. And the archers, the Joseph offspring were archers. 24. But his bow abode in strength, and the arms of his hands were made strong by the hands of the mighty God of Jacob. From thence is the shepherd stone of Israel, the rock. And he was a rock. 25. Even by the God of thy father, who shall help thee, and by the Almighty, who shall bless thee with blessings of heaven above, blessings of the deep that lieth under, blessings of the breast and of the womb. And this is the Almighty El Shaddai, the great God of Jacob. 26. The blessings of thy father have prevailed above the blessings of my progenitors unto the utmost bound of the everlasting hills. They shall be on the head of Jacob, and on the crown of the head of him was separate from his brother. Joseph, of course, here receiving a great blessing, as he was the favored son of his father Jacob. Benjamin, this is the child of Rachel. She died giving birth to him in Bethlehem, where Christ was born. Bethlehem meaning the house of bread, and she gave him a terrible name as she was dying. She called him son of my sorrow, but Jacob changed his name to Benjamin. 27. Benjamin shall raven as a wolf. In the morning he shall devour the prey, and at night he shall divide the spoil. Now he had some famous offspring, and they were very good at acting like wolves. And one of his offspring was Paul. If you recall, he would say, I'm a Jew, I'm a Benjamite, and that's what he was. And no one fought harder to tear apart the church in the early days than Paul, stoning Christians and holding coats while they stoned Stephen. But then when he did turn around, he became a wolf in the other direction. He did work the hardest to push the gospel into the land of the Gentiles. 28. And these are the 12 tribes of Israel. And this is their father spake unto them, and blessed them every one according to his blessing. He blessed them. 29. And he charged them and said unto them, I am to be gathered unto my people. Bury me with my fathers in the cave that is in the field of Ephron the Hittite. That is the burial place that Abraham bought to bury Sarah. In the cave 30 that is in the field of Machpelah, which is before Mamre, in the land of Canaan, which Abraham bought with the field of Ephron the Hittite for a possession of a burying place. 31. There they buried Abraham and Sarah his wife. There they buried Isaac and Rebekah his wife, and there I buried Leah. And if you take the first letters, it will spell Israel of those buried there. 32. The purchase of the field and of the cave that is therein was from the children of Heth. 33 to conclude chapter 49. And when Jacob had made an end of commanding his sons, he gathered up his feet into the bed, and yielded up the ghost, and gathered unto his people. So he was sitting up when he gave these blessings and these curses, and he pulled his feet up onto the bed and died. Chapter 50. And Joseph fell upon his father's face, and wept upon him, and kissed him. 2. And Joseph commanded his servants and physicians to embalm his father, and the physicians embalmed Joseph. 3. And 40 days were fulfilled for those which were embalmed, and the Egyptians mourned for him 60 and 10 days. This was a mummification process, and in order to preserve that body, it took 40 days. And then it would have been 70 then with the additional mourning period before they can take him to Canaan to be buried. 4. And when the days of mourning were past, Joseph spoke unto the house of Pharaoh, saying, If now I have found grace in your eyes, speak, I pray you, in the ears of Pharaoh, saying, 5. My father made me swear, saying, Lo, I die in the grave which I have digged for me in the land of Canaan. There shalt thou bury me. Now therefore let me go up, I pray thee, and bury my father, and I will come again. Okay, it says here that Jacob himself had digged out a place for his own burial in that cave. 6. And Pharaoh said, Go up and bury thy father according as he made thee swear. 7. And Joseph went up to bury his father, and with him went all the servants of Pharaoh, the elders of the house, and the elders of the land of Egypt. This would have been quite a funeral procession moving through the land. 8. And all the house of Joseph and his brethren, and all his father's house, only their little ones and their flocks and their herds, they left in the land of Goshen. So they left the herds and the little children. 9. And there went with him both chariots and horsemen, and it was a very great company. 10. And they came to the threshing floor of Atad, and that Atad means thorn, which is beyond Jordan, and there they mourned with a great and very sore lamentation. And he made a mourning for his father 7 days, 7 being in biblical numerics the number of completion. 11. And when the inhabitants of the land, the Canaanites, saw the mourning in the floor of Atad, They said, "This is a grievous mourning to the Egyptians, wherefore the name of it was called Abel Mizraim, which is beyond Jordan." And that long name means the mourning of the Egyptians. 12. And his sons did unto him according as he commanded them. 13. For his sons carried him into the land of Canaan, and buried him in the cave of the field of Machpelah, which Abraham bought with the field for a possession of a burying place of Ephron the Hittite before Mamre. 14. And Joseph returned to Egypt, he and his brethren, and all that went up with him to bury his father, after he had buried his father. And you wonder, well, why didn't they stay? Well, they didn't take their flocks, and they didn't take the little children, and besides that, Joseph had promised Pharaoh that he would return. 15. And when Joseph's brethren saw that their father was dead, they said, "Joseph will peradventure hate us, and will certainly requite us all the evil which we did." Now the older brothers are afraid. They are thinking, well, he's probably going to turn against us for sure this time. 16. And they sent a messenger unto Joseph, saying, "Thy father did command before he died, saying," 17. "So shall ye say until Joseph, Forgive, I pray thee now, the trespass of thy brethren, and their sin, for they did unto thee evil. And now we pray thee, forgive the trespass of the servants of the God of thy father." And Joseph wept when he spake unto them. Joseph probably realized that the first time they asked for forgiveness, that they likely didn't mean it or lied, because they're asking for forgiveness again. 19. 18. And his brethren also went and fell down before his face, and they said, "Behold, we be thy servants." And once again, Joseph's dream is fulfilled, that his brothers would bow down before him, and this is the several times that it has happened. 20. But as for you, be thought evil against me, but God meant it unto good, to bring to pass, as it is this day, to save much people alive. In other words, Joseph fully recognizes that the sin his brothers committed against him turned out to be within God's plan. 21. Now therefore fear ye not, I will nourish you and your little ones. And he comforted them and spake kindly to them. 22. And Joseph dwelt in Egypt, he and his father's house, and Joseph lived 110 years. Now, he was about 13, maybe 14, when he was sold into Egypt. So you can see that he has been in Egypt for a while, and he was about 40 when his family came down. So that would be about 70 years that the family of Jacob have been in Egypt. And we would wonder, well, why didn't they leave? Remember that Jacob, in his farewell speech, did tell them that they would go back to the land that had been promised them through their father Abraham. 24. And Joseph said unto his brethren, Eye to eye, and God will surely visit you, and bring you out of this land unto the land which he sware to Abraham, to Isaac, and to Jacob. You will come out. Even Joseph is saying this at his death. 25. And Joseph took an oath of the children of Israel, saying, God will surely visit ye, and ye shall carry up my bones from hence. 26 to end the book and the chapter. So Joseph died, being 110 years old, and they embalmed him, and he was put in a coffin in Egypt. In other words, he was mummified, and he was put in a sarcophagus, and they did take Joseph's coffin with them. We will learn when we move into the book of Exodus. And they did take Joseph across the Red Sea and into the land of Canaan eventually, when they were able to enter the promised land. The book of Genesis. This video is an outreach ministry of the Essex United Methodist Church in Essex, Missouri. Thank you.